There we go. Good job. Good job, David
Okay,
came
okay,
back
yeah,
on.
yeah. No,
We would
that's
have had to
okay.
do a rerun. Would have just had to
Well,
start all
you,
over again.
you actually might have to anyway. Sure, I'll just say a quick hello, and then we can introduce the topic. And if you want to go back to the other slide and just do a quick couple of
No,
points,
well, it was
then you
just
can. But
the budget and the market overview, so nothing's really changed there, and it maybe doesn't make for great reading anyhow. So
okay. No, that's okay. You may go back to the end. Well, listen, welcome everyone. We've just pressed record there on this. I'm just doing a very quick hello today. The reality is, I'm sitting in the center of the Ministry of Defence, past all the security and through all the hurdles to get in here. I've currently in a meeting with the Armed Forces Minister, and I've dropped out of that meeting to come and do this because the webinar is more important than meeting the Armed Forces Minister of the United Kingdom when it comes to our tribe within prop funders and our wonderful guest today. So, yeah, topic today, as has been said, there is mitigating the challenges of UK planning. And this is such an important topic. And I mean, over the years I've been involved in property. This is, I know for many people, has been such a bugbear in terms of the challenges around it. And yet, I think it also presents a great opportunity. So it's brilliant to have Kat and Nick today. How are you guys?
Yep, we're all
good.
ticked off.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Yes, all
Uh,
good.
Fantastic. And yeah, so you're obviously planning gain experts. You just know all about the planning. So I think that Brenda's going to take you through some of the questions that a lot of our community had. And I think, Brenda, we're focusing very much on sort of the problems that had existed in the past, maybe the update, which I think is really important for Nick and Kat to give a where are we right now? Because things do change and evolve. Look at the opportunities around planning, but then also really see the model that planning gain experts have brought to the market and why that creates an opportunity, I think, for investors and for developers who might want to diversify into planning uplift. So I'm sure Nick and Kat, you're both looking forward to the webinar.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, absolutely.
Grand, grand. Okay, well, I will leave you in Brenda's capable hands. And again, as normal, everyone, if you have questions, stick it into the Q&A, and Brenda will be able to have a look at it. And then, as normal, we'll get the recording out to everyone, and people can see the recording. And if questions aren't answered during the live recording, then we'll be able to email you separately on that. So fantastic. I will leave you in the capable hands of Brenda, and have a fantastic webinar.
Yeah. Enjoy your meetings.
Okay.
Yeah, all good stuff. Basically what I'm going to do first of all is get you and Nick, Kat, just to give a brief overview of your background, just to let the people know who you are, where you have been, where you're currently, and where you're hoping to go. Yeah, okay. Absolutely. Nick, do you want to start?
Yes, I can start. Yes, I've been working in property development since the 1980s, where I first worked for the sheltered housing developers McCarthy and Stone as a land buyer. Then worked for various PLC companies in the land acquisition role until I gave up the corporate world in 2001 and set up on my own as a land. Both a land consultant and also a land promoter, i.e., securing legal interest in property, getting planning permission, and then selling it on. Did a bit of development, but my expertise was not in building and laying bricks and doing that sort of stuff. So I only did built a few houses, a few barn conversions, and bits and bobs, and then concentrated on land acquisition and securing land under option agreements and promotion agreements, and then securing planning permission and then selling it on and making a profit. So very obviously I'm involved in planning all the time. So that is a very quick high level overview of my experience.
Very good. Brilliant. And so my background, so my father's a developer, so I've always known about property from the get-go since I was pretty much born. And then I wanted to go into property, went to university, studied land management at Reading University, then trained as a surveyor, so I'm a RIC surveyor, worked for commercial property developers and residential developers as well, been sort of doing development as well for the sort of last 7 years as well, property development. Started planning gain experts about 5 years ago. Sort of Ed, my business partner, and I met a franchise. So we met at another franchise that was called Sourced, and we realised there was a bit of a gap in the market for planning gain experts, which obviously we'll touch on later, what the business does. And that's sort of really why we decided to kind of go into that, is that we thought there was an opportunity for land investment and for experts to be trained on this, and opportunities for investors as well. So hopefully that gives you guys an idea about my background too.
Very good. You really were steeped in property and development from the start, Kat. You weren't going to get away from it.
I wasn't going to get away from it. No, I'd living and breathing it really. Yeah. So yes, definitely.
And you, Nick, you have a similar type of background. Well, not all of it, but the sheltered housing side of it. I would have worked for a sheltered housing association in Northern Ireland for a time. So
I only worked there for 4 years, and so but obviously then went into mainstream housing and other bits and bobs as well. So we get involved in all sorts of stuff.
It's good to have all the little bits, so the old building blocks, they all make whole at the end of the day. So that's good, all that experience. And it's not just you two. Maybe missed a slide. You also have then a team with you as well, Kath. Do you have other people who work with you?
Yes, so we're growing actually at the moment, our team. So we've got the land team, we've got Nick, who's our head of land, and we've also just taken on another chap that's going to start with us at the start of December. And then to say we should probably have about 3 or 4 land experts and land mentors on our team. I've got our head of planning, Amanda Ollie. I think we've got a slide on that, haven't we? Of some of
we do. Just give me 2 seconds. I will just pull that one up. You can keep talking.
Oh yes, okay, yeah, no problem. So we've got our head of planning, which is Amanda Ollie, and then again we've got other external planning consultants again that will be part of our growing team, so that we can scale as our franchise scales as well. And we've always got the support there. And then we've got architects, the team of architects that we work with. We've got our sales team, our marketing team as well. So so we're pretty well covered, really.
So just give me 2
That's
seconds.
Okay.
Find my way back again. Very good.
The wonders of tech, eh?
I know. David's usually you can just see the steam starting to come out of his ears whenever something doesn't go the way he wants it to. So we've got your entire group.
Yes, and then we've got Ed, so my business partner Ed. So he's his background is land agency, so he's experienced on that side of things, and he's also assists with investors and our sales team. And we've got Paul Hanson, he's our chairman, and also a very experienced land expert that's worked for property developers and land managers. So he sort of enables us when we look at sites as well. So certainly the big complex ones, it's good to have another perspective on these sites, just to make sure we've considered all angles and we've mitigated as much risk as possible. And his specialism is in renewable energy as well, so commercial property and residential. But I think there's certain areas that it's broad. But I think that's the particular interest of his is the renewable energy side, isn't it,
Very
Nick?
good.
I think we sort of run a few projects past him on that sort of angle.
So you have real strength and depth with different people feeding in and having worked in different backgrounds, and even Nick with his sheltered housing and Ed with his land sourcing, all of those things feed into each other, and you're able to bring a great deal of experience. And you talked about, I think maybe I should move on to the slides instead of talking over it. This then is PGA, so this gives you more information on that. And you talked about the 100 years combined experience, and that's quite a lot.
So we've we wanted to make sure that when we started this business that there were people with the decades of experience behind it, not someone who's just started yesterday. It's all about sort of having the credibility and the proven track record, and that's sort of what we've been very strict about. When we grow the business, when we take on new land mentors, we take on new planning experts and planning town planners, that they have got that sort of background to support us in our projects, because you're only as good as the people that are working on those projects. And that's really, really important to us to make sure, property, there is a risk to property, but with the right support and obviously making sure those people have got the experience behind it, that does reduce that risk. And we're accountable to our investors, making sure that we have looked at these things to try and reduce the risk there. And then, as I say, we've got the transparency with our projects, so we're open about how they're performing as well. So that's really important to us, to our investors.
I read a quote a couple of days ago, and it said, I wish I'd never bought that house or that piece of land. Said nobody ever, and it is true. Nobody ever regrets buying. Yes, they may have issues, they may have problems, but at the end of the day, it's an asset. Yes, there's risk, but it's still an asset, and it's usually an appreciated asset. So that's all good.
If it's so I think it's really important with that, in terms of, we've had people that have just bought any old land and just gone, well, it's land, it's fine, it's got value, and you're like, well, no, actually,
not the value important. Maybe you want. It has value, but maybe not you were anticipating.
And sometimes we have to walk away from deals. Not every deal was stack, and that's we've got to have the discipline to do that. And I think that's something that your initial urge is, I just want to get the deal done, and you become a bit of a deal junkie, but you're like, no, this is not a good use of funds, and I'm not comfortable with it.
Out of it.
Absolutely, you've got to take the emotion out of it. And Nick and I are quite sort of strict with what we look at. Nick, with our franchisees, sometimes we do have to say to them, I'm sorry, but we're not going to be able to support that one, because it's just not viable. We're not just going to go for any old deal. It's just not viable, and they might not like to sometimes hear that, but we've got to look at
the reality.
The reality, absolutely. We've got to protect everyone. So we've been so Planning Go Next was started in 2021. As you've touched on, Brenda, obviously we've got sort of over 100 years combined experience. We're nationwide, so we've got franchisees all over the country, and we've got sort of just under 20 franchisees at the moment. We're growing. We're looking to grow to about 30. We don't want to go too big, just because the sense that we want to make sure that we support all our franchisees really well, and we've got the resources in place to fund the projects as well, and can give that good level of service to both investors and also our franchisees. So we do have a limit, but there's a reason for that, so that we produce quality sites, and we can give that service.
You're focusing on quality and not quantity, which
absolutely
is better for the people that are working with you.
Absolutely.
Good. Well, we'll move on. Okay, now this is the one that everybody has an opinion on planning, and most people nowadays believe that planning has huge challenges. And I let maybe Nick, if you want to take
this one. You want to your slides there. Once you've obtained planning permission, in most instances there would be a condition on the planning approval that limits the time for it to be implemented to up to 3 years. Generally, it used to be 5 years, and it's now 3 years, and there's no plans, I don't believe, to change that. And obviously, in some instances, you do find people will implement a planning permission, and once it's legally implemented, then that planning permission lasts forever. So if you build a foundation or something like that, and it's acknowledged by the local authority that it is a legitimate implementation, then that planning permission will then last forever. So that is the situation with regard to planning lapses. Local authorities, obviously, the cost of running planning applications now has probably gone up in the last 3 years by 60% in terms of all the additional reports and everything that you need to submit to make the planning officer's job as easy as possible, that they've got all the professional responses to biodiversity, ecology, noise, all manner of different things is on their list that you need to submit with planning permissions. And if you don't fulfill all the requirements, then it gives the local authority an easy way of just refusing it, and you start again. Just because you get a refusal doesn't mean there's never going to be a chance on that site again. It's just looking at the reasons why it's been refused and addressing those issues. It always surprises me when you see people who have put a planning application in, and then the council say, oh, well, we can't do this, withdraw it. My view is you never withdraw a planning application, because with a planning refusal, it tells you the reasons why it's been refused, and you can address them. With a withdrawal, there's no reasons why it's going to be refused, and they've recommended it. So you can address the issues that why it's been
Yeah.
refused. So I would never waste my time withdrawing a planning approval.
You're not saving any money by withdrawing it because
No,
you've already
no,
probably
no.
paid what you're
Yeah,
going to pay. So
indeed. I
whether
mean,
you withdraw
previously,
or refuse, it's going to cost you the same.
yeah,
Yeah.
indeed. Previously, if you withdrew or got a planning refusal and you reapplied within 6 or 9 months or something, you used to get a free go, but that's now
Mm,
gone. So that's no longer the case. So if you reapply for planning permission, you have to pay your planning application fee again. There's no
okay.
freeway, which there used to be, but it's no longer the case.
Mm.
Um, and obviously, as you've said here, with your planning problems, the makeup of the land, whether it's green belt land, grey belt land, or whatever. Grey belt is a new introduction that's come in from the latest government, whereby if it's adjacent to a settlement and doesn't overcome can overcome some of the specific, I think it's 5 or 6 different requirements for it to be grey or green belt. And if you
Mm,
address all of the grey belt ones, then in theory, if you are applying for planning permission and the local authority has a shortage of, on a residential basis, shortage of their 5-year housing land supply, which is also now
yeah.
re important, and under the changes to the National Planning Policy Framework, which were issued just before Christmas last year, a lot of local authorities now have a more a larger housing need, and
Yeah.
therefore some which had 10-year housing land supply now have dropped below 5, and therefore that means that they have to accept stuff in principle, whereas
Yeah.
previously it's, oh no, we've got a 5-year, we don't need that, blah blah, and work up
Mm,
reasons and whatever. You've also mentioned here about objections from neighbours and people. That is quite common. We still have the old, what are called the NIMBYs, not in my backyard, people who will oppose any kind of
mm,
application. The fact that they live in a house that was built 30 years ago and may have been on the green belt site is irrelevant to them, because they just don't want to see any change. Uh,
mm,
but the objections from locals and neighbours, the only enforceable objections are objections on planning grounds,
yeah.
relating to perhaps the local plan of the local authority, or other things. Just because you don't like it is not a reason why it should be
Yeah.
refused. Yeah, so there will always be objections from neighbours, because neighbours don't like change, and it does, in some instances, that planning applications do have an impact on them. But as long as it's not a detrimental impact, and from a
Mm,
planning officer's perspective, they're not seeing that as a fundamental reason why it should be refused, then they can object as much as they like. But tough, it doesn't work like that. You have
yeah.
to object on planning
It does
ground.
cause hassle though, and probably it's what puts people off maybe from putting in a planning application. They
Yeah,
think, oh no,
it
I'll
does.
fall out with my neighbours, or yeah.
In some instances, if you were a landowner and you put a planning application in, your neighbours would be giving you grief and
Yes.
giving you evil eyes when you pass them in the
Mm,
street. Whereas sometimes it's always, if they went through a third party, like going through planning gain experts
yeah.
or something,
It's
we
one step
we take
removed.
all
Yeah.
the
Hmm.
grief
Hassle.
from the neighbours, whereas the
Yeah.
landowners just sat there, and a lot of objections generally are from people who've got green eyes, and if they thought they
Yeah.
owned a bit of land and thought that they was planning, they'd be doing exactly the same thing, and just
Mhm.
because they haven't, they're jealous of
Mm.
their neighbours. So it's one of those things. And
Mm.
obviously there have been some relatively swift changes in legalities on planning, but generally speaking, they do take a bit of time, and working through local plans takes a
Yeah.
long time and years to go through. And obviously there's various criteria they need to go through in terms of public consultation and all that kind of stuff. So there's always going to be issues with legislation. There's discussion at the moment regarding possible further changes to the planning system, which are currently being sought through government, but there's never a timetable that works that it all comes through. So it's one of those things you have to live with, unfortunately, and not let it
Mm.
wind you up, and not be in a position to move things forward.
Yeah.
So that's a very, very quick overview on your little
Mer-
slide of challenges and things. So hopefully that will
Yeah.
lighten
So
people accordingly.
that'll lead us nicely and then to the solutions and what you can do differently and what
Yeah.
you do differently.
Yeah,
So
fine. Well, I think a lot of the solutions here are, if there's something with as you say, with lack of planning permission, there's always an opportunity when you look at the particular policies of that the local authority, whether they have a 5-year housing land supply. That generally they only produce an annual report, each local authority, which says, oh, we've done our assessment and we've got X point 5 years land supply or whatever. And the only way you can get that updated generally is to have a look at any planning appeals that are running, whereby as part of the appeal process, the local authority will respond to a requirement to demonstrate, to tell them what their current housing land supply is. So it's an easier way to find out what it is rather than waiting for the annual report that they will produce in terms of their performance over the last 12 months. So that's always looking. Planning permissions which expired, that's not uncommon at all. A lot of people get planning permission and then forget to do anything with it, and then it
yeah.
expires after 3 years. Just because it's got an expired planning permission does not guarantee that you'll be able to get another planning approval, same as it was. But going to people with sort of experience like we have and our planners do, who work with us, we can generally see a way forward and try and mitigate those expired planning, so you can reinstate them, and sometimes you can reinstate them and improve upon the previous planning approval. Refused planning applications, as you said, denied. Again, the reasons that they are given are reasons that you can look to address rather than just chucking it in the bin and saying there's no way of doing anything. I think previously I've looked and acquired interest in sites that have had planning approval, sorry, a planning refusal and planning appeals, and just reading through the detail of it and understanding it from a planning perspective, you can address that, put your application in, and deal with the issues that are there in the reasons why it was refused. Um, so and then we've also got the thing where you've mentioned about existing planning permissions. Existing planning permissions don't always optimize the value of the land, and there is always an alternative that you can look at. Whether it be a site for 5 or 6 big detached houses and you replan that for a care home or something like that, or the mention here about a site in that we were involved in which had planning permission for a student accommodation scheme, and that was replanned into a co-living scheme, which actually generated a higher value for the land than the existing use. So there's always a potential opportunity, and never write it all off until you've done some investigation and seen whether there's mileage to make the thing work and add value, which puts a smile on everybody's face because it's worth more.
So if you're ordinary Joe public and you're going, I have this piece of land, it has, it's been refused or I've been denied, or they've said, I can't do this or I can't do that, or I'm not sure how I can get the most value out of it. How did they go about it? Or is it a case of that's too big a job for one person, and this is why planning gain experts are
Well,
important for
I think
people? Is
I think
that,
if someone has tried and wasted their money from perhaps from their lack of experience in securing planning approvals of various different, not just residential, could it be commercial or other uses, latching on to someone like PGE and the experience that we've have in different kinds of planning approval is something where ultimately we can deliver a planning approval, or we can give a high level overview. If it's, you do see things where people will put planning applications in and you can think, well, I can understand why that was refused, because it was a really poor scheme and they've done it and they haven't done it from they've gone to perhaps an architect or whatever who's just followed their instructions and done it without realizing the optimization that's needed. And even providing, I've seen applications which have been refused where there's just been a red line around a piece of land, and that's never going to be helpful to prove what it's going to look like. Most people can't read drawings and read plans. They can see them, but they don't actually understand what they're going to look like at the end of the day, and so on. And therefore, being able to interpret stuff and come up with solutions is where we're latching onto our expertise and producing for landowners a planning approval that's going to be worth more than it is at the moment.
And Kath, you'd also mentioned you have, and I know Nick's touched on it, lots of affiliate contacts with architects and, developers and people who know sites and who know land. And that is a big help as well within your team.
Yes, absolutely. So so we've got sort of our architects already that we work with, and obviously they'll be familiar with the sort of projects that we're doing. We've purposely chosen them for, say, residential, or if it was care home, we'd make sure that we've chosen architects that are more familiar with care homes. So that's important, that who you work with, that is their area of expertise as well. And then to say we've got developer clients as well that we know what they're looking for, so again we can be sourcing sites and getting planning, knowing that there's an exit there as well in place. So we're quite well connected, and that's the beauty of the team itself. Because of our decades of experience, we have a lot of contacts and connections that we've built up as well that we can be bringing to the table and the business. So I think in terms of we offer, right at the heart of it is the education side of things. So, we're trying to create, I think David mentioned on a previous webinar, we're trying to create a bit of a community, really. So we've got the investors that can obviously are looking for opportunities to invest in projects. It's the next slide. They're looking to invest. That's okay. They're looking to invest in projects which they know that we've mitigated the risk, and they're going to be good investments for them. But also it's the educational side that's important, that they understand what they're investing in, so they get the same education as our franchisees as well. So it's online modules that they can watch, bite-sized modules that they can watch, and also have advice on any projects that they come across. It might be someone in the family that's got a site that they want, some trusted advisors on what they think is possible for that site, so they can protect its value. And then obviously we will do regular sort of webinars and communication with any sites that obviously they've invested in. They get priority access as well to any projects, and they know the quality of the projects that are coming through are going to be consistently good through our investor club. And then the franchisees, they're getting the same level of education to an extent to the start, but obviously that they're getting more of the hands-on support as they find sites, because the online content is probably theoretical. The true learning comes from actually going out there and actually finding those opportunities and getting site-specific feedback, which they get with our land mentors each week, so they know exactly how we appraise those sites, how we pull them apart, how we make sure that we've looked at all the angles, and supporting them all the way from start to finish to find those opportunities. So everyone's very well motivated to say that our franchisees, we do 50% profit shares with them. So when they're bringing sites to us, they're obviously getting the 50% net profit share after the investor returns, and the investors are also getting 50% ROI on our projects. And also the team are very much getting their profit shares as well. So our land mentors are getting profit shares. So everyone's very aligned with making sure that we're all accountable to each other, and making sure that we're not going to run with any old project, because no one wins in that sense. We just want to make sure that those projects are successful and that we take it from start to finish, and we're applying good due diligence throughout the process.
Yeah. So it's important for you that you're basically invested in it, as you said, because you're going to want it to work, because it's going to work out for PGE. So it's not like you're going to say, oh, here, do this, off you go.
Yes.
Job's done, we've got our whatever, on you go. It's not like that. It's you working with them to get the outcome that you have said that you think they should get.
Absolutely.
So that's really important, that you're a partner with them. You're not just sort of some standoff person that's going, yeah, that's it, done. We've ticked our boxes, off you go.
Absolutely.
And if you fail, you fail. Oh, well, it's not like that. You are working with people. Yeah,
and it's long term. We want long-term relationships. This isn't, property is about building relationships. It's a people industry, and those that do well are, they're here for a long time for a reason, because you're honourable, you do the right thing, the communication's there, and that's kind of what we stand by. That's we're looking for long-term relationships and building that trust with investors. Credibility, absolutely.
So very good, and that's excellent. And we will move on now. This is obviously a project that you did do, that you completed. So either Nick or Kat, if maybe both of you want to.
This is one of Nick's projects.
Okay.
So it's had
Yeah, this is
So this is a real-time example
yeah,
of something that you did too.
a site in Newport in Shropshire, which is a lovely town, a part of what's called Telford and Wrekin District Council, which is area. This is a site that was formerly it was like a nursery on there, which is in effect doesn't count as a brownfield site because it's an agricultural use. Um, I secured an option on the access point from an adjoining property owner, and then I secured which was on a fixed price basis, and then I secured what's called a promotion agreement on the balance of the site, which basically is where your interests and the landowner's interests are aligned.
Yeah.
So the cost of securing the planning permission is down to me, but ultimately, as and when the property is sold in the open market, then the proceeds are split on the agreed percentages. And in this particular instance, it was an 80-20 split. In terms of securing the planning permission, initially when I first looked at the site, it was identified as a draft commercial use site, and then ultimately it changed as put through the local plan process to be actually part of what was called the green network, which was trying to keep green areas around settlement boundaries, and therefore we had to argue with, well, not argue, but have discussions with the local authority to basically get them to accept that there was no public access to that land. There was a public footpath which ran down the road, which is just to the south of where that is, which was used to be an adopted road, but following a bypass around the edge was unadopted, and then the ownership was split back to the people who fronted onto it. But we eventually managed to get outline planning permission for up to 55 dwellings on the site, with a large area of potential open space, which was dealing with the green network issue. And ultimately, we sold that site on, and at the same time added in a few other bits of land around there. A little site with a white rectangle at the bottom. We've got consent on that for an additional 4 houses, and then the next white bit following the area, which is a children's play area. We've got consent on there for another 2 dwellings. And then up to the north, we also retained a ransom strip to another acre of land up there. We did actually have an agreement with the landowner, but he sadly died and his children were less than amenable. So we left them out of the equation because we couldn't wait for them and wanted to move it forward. And ultimately, that ransom strip was sold to the developer who bought it, and he bought the land off the landowner and secured planning permission on there for another 9 properties. So the overall site ended up being very good. The cost of securing it, I can't remember exactly how much we spent in terms of getting development, but overall, including all the additional little bits which were added on, that produced for my company about £700,000 worth of profit on the scheme. The landowners ended up with over £2.5 million for what they were selling for. So everyone ended up with a smile on their face.
Yeah, definitely.
That's what you want. That's the win-win situation that you want, isn't it?
Yes, indeed.
And new housing, which is also a huge of huge importance to the government at the minute, because you're talking about 375k new homes every year that they're looking in the next 5 years, up to 1.5 million homes. So, it's, as you say, Nick, a nursery site, yes, it could be deemed agriculture, but there was obviously a business running from there, so it wasn't.
No, it had shut, so it had been sort of nothing happening on it probably for 5 years. The nursery had actually closed, and there were no buildings or whatever on it, but it had the foundations were in there for a few greenhouses and things, but nothing worth that you could see because all the main buildings were there. I mean, it wasn't without complications. There were badger sets on the site, all sorts of other technical issues that we had to overcome and deal with, but it's one of those things that there's always a little thing in there that you've got to deal with, and if you've never dealt with badger sets before you learn really. But they're a bit easier to deal with in Great Crested Newts and 1 or 2 other things.
Creatures,
Yes. You probably know more about wildlife and different counties and across England now than you ever hoped to learn in your lifetime.
Indeed, yes, yeah.
the bats seem to raise their head every now and again. So
Yes, they do. They do.
yes.
I mean, I did a development at home once where I converted some barns and uh, did a bat survey and discovered it where I had a feeding roost in one of the barns, which I didn't know,
Okay.
and had to get an English nature license to allow the development to take place. It didn't stop me getting planning permission, but there were certain things that you needed to do in terms of the when you were re-roofing it, you had to put a particular kind of roofing felt. Old-fashioned roofing felt, not the new sort of nylon-y type stuff, the old-fashioned stuff. And ultimately that was all part of the license to undertake the development because of the
Yeah.
bats that were there. So it's not without bats are relatively easy to overcome issues, I have to say.
Okay, because most people hear bats and they literally run for the hills thinking, oh, it's never going to work. So there you go. Nick has expert with bats. So
Yeah,
Batman.
all good.
Yeah.
And Kat, I see the 20 months project timescale. Is that sort of a typical, or is it different by county by county? Is that sort of
It depends on I mean, I guess Nick will probably be able to vouch for this as well. It depends on the size of the project, the complexity of the project, and what the project is exactly. So if it's a smaller project, like it's a single plot, or even, 3 or 4 houses, it could be within 12 months. Is that fair to say, Nick? And then obviously if it could be a 30-unit scheme, you might be looking at sort of 18 months plus, aren't you? Sort of could be more 2 years potentially.
yeah.
And if it's quite a contentious site that there's local opposition, again, that could take longer. So every site's going to be different. And what we do in the business is try and have a mix of sites and not all these big whopper sites where the profits are absolutely astronomical, just because those sites can take longer. And we know investors will want their return back on their money sooner as well. So we go for a real mix. And also with our franchisees, we don't want them to just be going for these really, really big sites all the time. So say you have to have a mix of sites that kind of come off in the shorter term as well as the long term as well. So, it's kind of spreading your risk a bit more as well. So
very good. Excellent. Okay, well, thank you for that. And I will move on. I don't know if anyone dropped any questions in the Q&A. No, you're answering all the questions, which is brilliant.
Excellent.
All the students on the webinar today have learned lots of things. So if anybody does, if you want to drop questions into the Q&A, we can even pick them up at the end, or as David had said at the start, if we don't get to them, we'll reply to you by email later on. So that's good. And we also then have some contact details for planning gains. So if you're interested in either the investor club or the franchise opportunity, then you can get in touch. I'm going to leave that there for a few minutes. You've as I said earlier, quite a good team around you, Kat. And you have different people who feed into different skills. So people can get in touch with you, contact you through these details, and you'll be able to then point them in the right direction and take them to the right person who could deal with their issues. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And if you need these details, if you haven't had time to write them down, we can send them to you as well. So just get in touch with us. Okay. And then finally, we're just closing off here. We know we've just a few more minutes to go. We have another podcast out, the Property Funding Podcast that David had recorded with Angus Griffin, who is a former FCA enforcement officer. I believe I've got that right. Scary title, but that was his title. And then he moved on from what he used to do into property and doing his own buy-to-lets and all the rest of it. But fascinating podcast, really, really interesting. Some great takeaways from it. So if you haven't got into the podcast yet, if you haven't seen them, please log into this one at the Property Funding Podcast, and you will be able to hear all about Angus's story and his work with the FCA. Plus, there's a whole host of other ones to learn about from too. So all good. And we also then, that's just our mission statement, which we probably tell everybody all the time. So we simplify and source and structure. So there you go. And if you need to talk to us, we have a free 30-minute property consultation. Please use it. It is free, no obligations. So if you're interested, just write that link down or get in contact with us at support@PropFunders and we'll send you the link to it. We'd be more than happy to talk to you. And finally, that's David on his mobile number. I let his mobile number go out, so he gets all the contacts, and then he farms them off onto me, so that's good. But he's the first port of contact. Look, thank you so much, Nick and Kat. That was really,
Thank
really
you.
interesting discussion today. Thank you to all the participants, all the people that have joined us today. We're really glad that you took the time and stayed with us. And as I say, it was a really, really good webinar today. Really interesting information. And get in touch with ourselves on those details or with Kat and Nick, and we'd be more than happy to talk to you about planning and the rest. Okay.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
No
Cheers.
problem.
Bye.
Thank you so much. All right.
Cheerio.
Okay.
Bye.